My name is Erin Colburn. I'm the Pre-Health Advising Coordinator for the College of Health Science. I'm joined with several of my colleagues who are here to support you in the application process from a collaboration that we've been doing over the last couple of years. I have Ms. Kelsey Nelson from Career Services, wave. I have Ms. Kelly Gold from Career Services. I also have Shannon Kerr from as a pre-health advisor from the College of Health Science Advising. I have Ms. Olga Salinas, who advises for pre-PA, myself included. And what we're going to do today is we're going to try and demystify the application process for all of the application services that we use. And so we're going to try and make this informative, but also very casual. So I'm going to share my screen real quick with a PowerPoint presentation. We will be sharing this out on our website and we can email it to you as well. So again, myself and Shannon, we are the two pre-health advisors that predominantly work. And then I also work closely with Olga Salinas as well. So ultimately, we have some goals for today for you all, is we want you to be aware that we are going to help you understand how to apply to graduate and professional school. We're also going to help you with some application timeline and kind of start to thinking about what your timeline might look like in terms of a primary application, your secondaries, if you're going to interview, and what acceptances look like, and really talk to you about what is the primary application or the centralized application service. I believe that is your question.
Oh, it is. I'm sorry. I was trying to get my notes all set up. So, perfect. So, Erin, how do I apply to professional or graduate school?
Great question. So, one of the things that I want you all to be aware of is that we are going to focus predominantly on the primary application today because that is the biggest part of the process, but there's more to it than that. But think of this as a cycle, a process where you're going to take steps moving forward. And so first we have a primary application, or what is also known as a centralized application service. We have secondary applications after that. Some of those secondary applications are actually inside the centralized application service, and some are separate entities. And then once you are through that part of the process, you'll probably undergo an interview. In some cases, you won't actually go and undergo an interview. It really depends on the type of program that you're applying for. You will get an invitation to interview in a lot of different ways, and we can talk a little bit about that too. So,
what is the what is the centralized application service?
It is one application. And so it really depends on where you're applying. If you're thinking about dental school, they have their own centralized application service. If they are applying to medical school, they might have the different types. So like it could be a podiatric or Texas schools, DO or MD, they each have their own, but they have a centralized application service where you get to fill out one set of information about you personally and tell it which schools to go out to. It's a really nice tool. And again, these are kind of the links for each of the areas. If you Google one of these acronyms, you usually can get it or pull it up. The application processes for these centralized application services, SOFIS is another one for public health. So they each have their own little individual component. So how it works, the centralized application service will open depending on the program you're applying for. So in the case of medicine, usually those applications open up in May. In dental, it's May, they open. For some of the others like PT, OT, they open up in July. For vet, they open up in January, and PA opens up in late April. So they're supposed to open up on April 29th this year. So in terms of the application, it opens and you start to fill it out. You complete all of the requirements and expectations. Once you've submitted all of your documents, you then pay for your schools. Typically, it's a lump cost for one school, and then as you add schools, it's a lower fee. There are fee assistance programs for most of the programs that we're talking about today. And so you should investigate if those are something that you're eligible for to cut some costs down. Once you've applied, and you've submitted your application, depending on the cycle and the time frame, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second, you'll go into what's called a verification process. From there, this service actually sends it to the schools. They're delivered or transmitted to the schools electronically. And then the school starts to deliberate and make decisions on whether they want to send secondaries, or they want to interview you, or they want to accept you, and so on and so on. So verification is something that tends to mystify students. It is the process that starts right after you say, yes, I'm ready for somebody to look at it. And all it is they take those official transcripts that you've submitted to the service, and they verify what you entered in as your college work. And so they check and they make sure that everything is accurate and correct. And they in turn go through the process of calculating some different GPAs depending on the school's needs. And so that process can take anywhere from 10 to 15 business days for most of these services. You might think that takes a long time, but it used to take like 6 weeks. And so now it's very efficient. So it can play into your decisions of your timeline, but be aware it has to go through verification before it can be sent to schools.
Okay, so here's a question for the students out there. People that work here, don't answer. True or false? As soon as you send your application in, schools will get it the minute you submit it.
So you can put your answer in the chat if you want. True or false, or say it out loud.
False.
False.
False. Good job.
Good job. You were listening. Do you guys have any questions about that part, about the application process, what it goes through?
Does the verification process take a different amount of time for the different services, or is it all pretty much the 10-day?
So the cool part is AMCAS, the MD program, is really the only one that's a separate company. ACOMAS, PA, PT, OT, they're all operating under the same company. So they actually all are pretty close to 10 to 15 business days. So once they have all your information and you've submitted and paid, 10 to 15 business days from there, they should have it processed unless there's errors. Great question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, we're going to move forward. Shannon, what do you need to know before you begin?
Okay, so the most important thing that you need to know is read the instructions and know where the help centers are. I was on the sites just yesterday, and right on the page were the frequently asked questions and this little bubble to the link to the online chats. Help was everywhere. They want you to know where the help is. They want you to have the answers, and they want you the right answers. They don't want to leave you hanging. The forms of the documents are there, and what you need is unofficial and official transcripts. They want you to have identifying documentation, contact information for the experience and for the letters of recommendations and evaluations.
I would also add to that I do think it's really important that you be aware. If you ask us a question, we're going to go out and look at the frequently asked questions first, because I can't tell you how many times I found the answer right there. So that's why we're saying do that first. Try them first, because they will be able to help you 24/7. And it will take me a day or so before I get to your email. So we want you to think about those things too.
Right.
So submission and deadlines. This is where it gets a little gray for each individual student. What I want you to understand is you need to look at the school deadlines. You need to determine for yourself where your needs are. Most, and I would say 90% of the programs, whether it's med, PT, OT, whether it's PA, are on a rolling admissions process. What that means is that when they receive applications on their transmission date, they begin processing those applications. So the earlier you apply in the cycle and the less likely you are to be close to the deadline, the better your chances are of being successful at getting accepted. When it comes to dental and med, for example, so their application process opens up in May. So MD opens up on May 3rd, DO opens on May 4th this year, and dental opens up on May 12th. So that's the soonest that students can begin to enter their information. And then they usually have a submission date, a date when students can begin to submit. And that has typically been the end of May for MD and DO, and it has been June 2nd for dental. So students have the option of submitting their application as early as June 2nd. And yeah, that would be the earliest that someone could submit. But really, if you think about it this way, the deadline for early decision programs, and those are not something I recommend students apply to because you can only apply to one school, but early decision is August 2nd. So you have this window of when you can submit your application between June and July. And I think that's early for those types of programs. For OT and PT, their applications open up in July. And I suggest students get their paperwork in by Labor Day. I think that that gives you enough time to still be early in a rolling admission process and still be effective. Honestly, what you're going to want to do is sit down with us, figure out when you're taking your tests, how that's affecting your application, to determine what your early really is. But in my experience, someone who's submitting to med or dent in September, that's getting late. October is foolish. November is crazy talk. Okay. In December, I'm looking at you like this. What are we doing? Why are we doing this? Why are we spending all this money? This doesn't make sense. So keep that in mind, that this is a cycle and a process, and that they're likely going to start interviewing people earlier than you might be applying. And so you need to be thoughtful. I use the old saying or adage that, you know, the word deadline has the word dead in it for a reason. You shouldn't be anywhere near a deadline if you know that school is a rolling admission school, because they've likely accepted their entire class before then. So those are some things to be keeping in mind. There's always a submission date that when you can start to submit, and then there is always that verification process, and there's what we call a transmission date too. So there's windows of opportunity where you can kind of plan or orchestrate this process. So,
Right. Okay, another checkpoint, true or false? Should you just jump into the centralized application service and play around with it without reading the instructions? Shout it out or put it in the chat.
False.
false.
Good job.
Good job. Read the instructions.
Does anyone have any questions about this?
Can you read the instructions and start to work on it in advance, or?
No. So here's what, that's a great question, Jill. Thank you for asking it. So you can read the instructions now. It won't necessarily be the most accurate instructions because they do make changes. So whether you're applying to med or OT, they may make some updates to the guide. So what you want to look for is you can get the gist of what's going on right now with the current cycles, but you want to look to see when they change the date information. So they'll usually on their website under their guide or their instructions say which cycle that guideline is relatively related to. You are more than welcome to read the instructions. You are welcome after reading the instructions of logging in and creating an account. Keep in mind, you don't want to fill anything out, because what's going to happen is there is a point when they close up shop. So the Centralized Application Service will close and they will clean out the entire account. And if you didn't submit your application, all that data is lost. So the things that you're writing that we talk about later, I would do them in a Word document. I would put them somewhere where you can get them easily. But in terms of entering your data and your information, you're going to wait until your cycle opens, and that's when you can start to enter. But you can most certainly read instructions and get the general idea of how it works. Just don't enter anything. Okay, did that answer your question, Jill? Great question.
Yes, thank you.
Anybody else? All right. Shannon, what are the sections of the primary application?
So your first section, so there are many sections. The first one are the that is a hard word, identifiable and biographical information. And that is exactly what you would think it would be. Your identifying information, which is your legal name, your preferred name, alternate names, ID numbers, and your birth and legal sex. The schools you attended. Let's go through this. That would be your high school. Now, many of us have attended multiple high schools. I know I did. But it is the high school that you graduated from. And do not send your high school transcripts. I know it's something that we all want to do. I'm proud of the high school. I went to Little Cambridge High School. I'm very proud of my class of 21, but they don't care. Don't send your high school transcript. But they also want to know the colleges you attended. And they do want this. They want to know every college you attended, and they want all of your transcripts. They want to know, and they want transcripts from every single college that you went to. They want every post-secondary school you attended, even the ones where you did not receive any credit from, and the ones that you received credits from, but they didn't have anything to do with your professional school. Once you've entered your colleges attended, you will need to save the forms and or documents. It's usually a PDF with the ID number and attach the information with your transcript request. Once you have entered your colleges attended, you will need to save that forms and or oh, sorry, I just said that. I'm sorry, I just repeated myself. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. Erin, scratch that part out of the video.
Okay. So often one of the biggest questions we get is how, Shannon, how do I request my transcripts?
Erin, so this is a great question. This is actually done through the National Clearinghouse, which can be found on the Student Schools website. For Boise State, you use your Student Center and then select academic records and request an official transcript.
Okay, has to be an official transcript, folks. You need that to be directly sent with that form that you pull. So when you first get it open, my advice after reading through the instructions is enter your colleges attended first. That allows you to pull those PDFs off and request your official transcripts from Boise State and other schools. Mm-hmm. You'll want to also make sure that you request an official transcript for yourself, because you need to be able to enter all of your college work into there. Mm-hmm. Okay, so true or false? My advisor can get my transcripts for me.
False.
Correct.
And you can get your own transcripts from the registrar's office through your student center.
Okay, and then to answer, so Dylan just asked, if you got concurrent credit for a class through a different college in high school, do you have to request that too? So with that concurrent credit, you should have requested that be sent to your college. So with that, that'll be on your college transcript. It shouldn't be?
So, no, you're correct. You're not. So Dylan, every college you attended, the transcript has to come from that institution. So if you did Boise State dual enrollment credit, that's on your official Boise State transcript. But if you took it at NNU, you need to request an NNU transcript separately.
That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah. So yes, every school you attend, you request the official transcript from those schools.
That school. Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I was trying to say.
Sorry.
And does the official transcript have to be electronic, or will they accept a paper copy?
So you need to read through the instructions and see what is an acceptable official transcript. It has to be an official transcript following all of the guidelines that make it a secure document. So with COVID right now, a lot of students are opting to do an electronical upload. So you can do that, but you have to make sure your institution has it as an official. If you've taken it out of the envelope, that doesn't work. It's not official anymore. It has to be sealed in an envelope directly from the school to the service.
Okay,
That
thank you.
makes sense?
Yeah.
Anybody else with some questions about transcripts?
Yeah, I have one.
Yeah.
If you've attended a trade school, you want that? They want that too? Okay.
Yep.
Everything.
Everything.
Everything. If you had some really crummy grades from another institution and you're trying to avoid sharing that information, if you don't share it, you are breaking the law because you're going to certify that everything you put on there is true. Everything goes, everything.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Perfect.
Okay, Erin, so what's next?
Coursework. So there is a section on all of the services where you will manually enter every class you've ever taken on your college transcript on the app. There is an option to pay to have someone else do it for you. Don't do it. It's $65 or more. And if they make a mistake, you can't fix it. If you want to be able to put your in-progress coursework in there and be able to make changes to that in-progress coursework, just sit down and do it. Take some time and pace yourself, okay? And put your courses in one by one, line by line. It does have to be everything, even withdrawals, even classes you didn't get a good grade in, even repeats. You have to put everything as it is on the transcript, because they will then, when they verify, make sure that what you put is the same that's on your official transcript. So they don't want discrepancies. There is a classification guide on each of the centralized application services for all the centralized application service, so you can identify which label to put on it. And you will also label credit hours, transcript. You can use your transcript guide for your grades. Keep in mind that AP credit can be identified, but unfortunately at Boise State University, our official transcripts lump AP credit together. So if you got it based off of a test score, it says test credit, English 101 and 102, but it doesn't say the courses, it just says 6 credits. And so you need to use your official transcript, not your unofficial, to enter your college work and read through the instructions if you have AP credit on how that's identified. Does that make sense? Whoop. Checkpoint.
Okay. True or false? If you repeated a course and it no longer counts towards your GPA, you do not need to enter it as part of the coursework on the application.
Thank you, Madison. Yay, Dylan. Yes, that's right. Everything goes in.
I see a true on there. Okay, yeah, false. Right. Everything goes.
So is there a section about work activities?
So I have entered my coursework and experiences or my coursework and hobbies. What about my hobbies and work?
So you need to be thoughtful about this. And so if any of you attended our application cohort meeting in February, which is also recorded, we talked about this in a little bit more detail. But I am going to go through this real quick. There are categories for labeling your experiences. And so you're going to want to look at your extracurriculars, your hobbies, your awards, your honors, publications. You're going to want to think about these categories like your volunteer and leadership, your research, your patient exposure, your observation, hobbies, and fun. You might be surprised what would count. For ACOMAS and AMCAS, which is the MD branch, you will see some categories like non-health volunteer or healthcare experience. You'll also see research and volunteerism. For PTCAS, OTCAS, and CASPA, there's some additional ones. There's patient care experience and healthcare experience. There's shadowing and leadership experience and teaching experience. For the veterinarians in the room, there's animal experience not involving a veterinarian, and then one with a veterinarian. And then there are also volunteers that are not animal related. So each of the experiences on the Centralized Application Service, so you can look at what you're going to be using, will give you a limited amount of characters with spaces, not words, characters with spaces to describe your experiences. And so we've given you this chart here so you can kind of see. So an AMCAS would have 700 characters with spaces, up to 15 experiences can be listed. And then there are 3 that you pick that would be most meaningful, and you get to expand on those ideas. Whereas at PTCast, you have an unlimited amount of experiences you can put in, but you only have 600 characters to describe each and reflect. So in terms of the big picture, I think this one is yours. Is this one yours, Shannon?
Yeah, so when we were doing this, putting it together, and from what I've been learning recently about experience and stuff, in reading people's personal statements and stuff, who's to say that one experience is better than another? Often professional schools like to see a variety. I've heard people say, well, like I like to camp, and I'm passionate about it. They don't want to hear about it. If you're passionate about it and it's what you love to do, and you're gaining something from it, why is that not an important thing? And so why wouldn't you write about that? They want to hear about these things. And if it's something that drives you, they want to know about these things. And there's places to put it in your personal statement. They give you room for that. There's 4 separate date ranges for reoccurring experiences. What they want to do. So if you want to expand on this too, Erin, that would be awesome. But I'm trying to think how to say this. But from what I found from reading through the AMCAS stuff, they put in it like they read it as plain text. There's no formatting option. So what you want to do is you want to write it out, just so it's no formatting option. So there's no bulleting or indenting. So you just want to be really good with your words and really be able to describe it. You know what I'm saying? Can explain it, Erin? Sorry.
That's okay. So what Shannon discovered is there's no formatting in these.
Mhm.
None. In other words, you'll have punctuation, you'll have, you can't bold anything, you can't make things into bullets. So you need to be thoughtful with your words.
Mhm.
These need to be reflective in nature, more so than descriptive. Okay, so when you describe something too much and you don't really tell us how you gained learning from it, it doesn't set you apart. It doesn't make you unique. Anybody can describe the duties of a CNA or a scribe. They can. And anybody can do those duties, let's be honest. But what happens in those environments, the stories that you collect from your experiences are uniquely your own. And if you have no ability to underline, or, you really shouldn't use exclamation point, that's a waste of characters, right? You need to be thoughtful about how your words have impact and how they're empowering you. So when you're doing these and you're doing 700 characters to describe and reflect about why that experience is important, that they hear about it, you need to be careful. And so what we recommend you do is put it, if you want to use Word to get your grammar and proofreading and get it organized, great. But then move it to Notepad so that it takes all the formatting out, and then cut and paste like rich plain text so that you don't get any jumble craziness. But when we read these on the application, they read like one huge paragraph. So you have to think about that. How do you create that insightful moment? And that was like an aha moment for Shannon, by the way, you all. She was really mystified by how powerful your words have to be, because it just looks like a big blob.
Mhm.
So, tech point.
So if you can't use
Can't use
formatting,
formatting. To
Sorry.
express the power of your experience, how important are your words going to be? You tell us, what do you think? And then we have a question from a student. Does anybody want to put in their 2 cents? Are your words really important or not?
Dylan said very important.
Very important. Okay. Yep. So the question that was asked was, should you fill out all 15 experiences on the AMCAS for the MD? And the answer is do your very best to do so. You get 15. That's an opportunity. So if you could, if you had maybe shadowed, you had lumped all your shadowing into one, break it apart so that you get that 15 if you're at 14. Or is there a volunteer opportunity that you did over multiple periods and there are separate stories that talk about different themes? You can do that too. You can also think about the process of that you want to be able to talk about meaningful opportunities. So hopefully that answered Nick's question. I'll clarify the statement about no periods or commas. You do need periods and commas. That's all you get is grammar. But you're going to use 1 exclamation point, not 3. You're not going to be able to italicize or bold. You're only going to be able to do proper punctuation and professionalism in 700 characters. But you're not going to have a hard return. That's not going to exist. You're not going to tab. You're not going to have any formatting whatsoever. So hopefully that clarified that. And then on the app that offers unlimited experiences to share, how many would you recommend doing? As many as you can. I want you to think about it this way, Katie. If you had an experience that you really wanted to talk about that was like one of your most meaningful experiences and you did it over a long period of time, you could break that up so that you would have multiple character boxes to share about that experience. So you want to be thoughtful about that. I would say, it's really hard to get past 15, but sometimes students don't realize that simple things like being a referee at a Yu-Gi-Oh tournament is leadership skills that they should have put on their app, or they camp every weekend in the summer months and it's a big deal to them. So I would say use discretion. I would hope you have somewhere between 10 and 15 for an OT application. Or if you're med, you should use every space they award you, everything they allow you to use. 600 words per experience. Yep. So you have the 600 words per experience on the OT CAS. It's not words, it's characters. It's characters. So it's the whole thing. And it's with spaces. So your spaces count against you as well. Great questions. All right. Any others for the group before we move on? Okay.
So Erin, what's a letter of evaluation?
Great question, Shannon. A letter of evaluation is a letter of recommendation. And all of the services have an electronic letter writer service built into the application process. Now, letters in most cases are typically something that travel with what we call secondary applications. But what you need to be aware of that this is an opportunity for you to have another person talk you up, to be able to share your qualities and characteristics and capabilities. The services, all the schools, almost all the schools that participate in a service will use the professional school services. And here's the other thing, it's free. So if you use the service letter writer service, in other words, you have your letters uploaded to the centralized application, then you don't have to pay anything for that. It's not extra. There are things like Interfolio and other things, and you can certainly use those, but you're going to get charged for them. So keep that in mind that this is a free service. We also in March did a very thorough letter of recommendation writer workshop. I've linked it in this. I will send you guys the links through the chat so you can watch to learn how do I ask for letters? Who do I ask for letters? When do I ask for letters? And how do I get the information to the letter writers? This piece is more pertaining to what the application service looks like in terms of how we do this with the letter writer process. So there are different types of letters, and when you get into the application process, this is probably the second thing you might want to do if you already know who your letter writers are, is you will go in and you will identify the types of letters that you will be able to use. And so examples of types of letters are individual, committee, and letter packet. And oftentimes a lot of individuals indicate that their school wants a committee letter. Well, there's always fine print. If your school does not provide a committee letter, we want this instead. Okay. They prefer it or recommend it, but Boise State University does not provide a committee letter. So I'm going to make this as simple as possible. When you get into the letter writer service and the application service, it's always an individual letter for Boise State. Always. Should always be an individual letter. Okay. So what will happen when you go in to put this information in, and what kinds of information do you need to have? Well, you will need the contact information of the letter writer you've asked. You will open up your application, you'll fill out their contact information, and one of two things will happen. With the AMCAS MD application, a PDF form will be generated. You need to save it, and you should email it to your letter writer because there's a link on it that is accessible, and then we can go right to the account and we can upload the letter that way. Okay. You'll also provide them with a resume. I think that is key. It's huge. It helps your letter writer distinguish you in a new way and look at you from another lens than they already do. If you're comfortable providing your personal statement, I personally think that's optional, but it's very helpful. And any materials they ask to provide. I know some instructors might ask you to write up what you think your letter would look like or something along those lines. The second option is some of the other services, whether it's OT, PA, ACOMAS in terms of the DO, DENT. When you type in their contact information and save it, it's automatically going to send them an email. So I suggest that when you are ready to put that information in, that you let your letter writer know. You send them an email. You say, hey, just wanted to let you know an email's coming from this centralized application service, so that they can watch that email that they've given you to use, and they can double check junk mail and spam. It always makes me chuckle when someone sends me saves it and then tells me, and I'm like, oh yeah, I already got it. I'm sorry. So keep those things in mind. So I went through all of the services today. And one of the key pieces is that there are some services that your letter doesn't have to be in before they'll verify you. And that would be for AMCAS, which is MD, ACOMAS, which is DO for medical, and dental, which is ASDAS. The rest of them either require you to have all your letters that you have said you need, and some of them say up to 5 letters. So for example, the VMCAS will allow 5 letters, but you need 3 letters before they'll verify your app. OTCAS, if you have 2 letters submitted, requested, you have to have 2 letters in before you can submit, be verified. And you can always add more letters up until the point of the limit of how many they allow for. AMCAS allows up to 10. DO, I believe they allow up to 6. And the others, it's usually somewhere between 4 and 5. Instructions are key. Checkpoint. My
Sure.
pre-health advisor at Boise State writes a committee letter. True or false?
False.
False. False. Right. Individual letters. Now, does your pre-health advisor write individual letters? Yes. Not committee.
But
But what?
don't email her and ask.
Don't ask me by email unless I know you very, very well. You
Mhm.
need to set up an appointment with me and have a conversation with me.
Mhm.
Caitlin, don't worry, you're fine. You're not in trouble.
Yeah, I think that was directed at me.
Caitlin, you're not in trouble. You were fine. We've been
Zoom
talking
makes
a lot.
it awkward. It's not like in person anymore, you know?
I know, but you can email someone and say, hey, I'd like to set up a Zoom session with you.
Yeah, good call.
And that's what I'm telling you all. Set up a phone conversation. Try and make it as personal as you possibly can, because they will be grateful for the effort that you put in, right? If you just email them, that's easy to do. And no offense, pardon my French, it's chicken shit. So
That's on video.
just keep that in mind, okay? Ask them as impersonable as you can, okay? And Caitlin, you and I are good, no worries. All right, does anybody have any questions about the letters? Who said the F bomb?
Actually, I have a question.
Yeah,
So, if I shadow back home, so it's not in the US, and I ask for like my orthodontist that I shadow like home for a recommendation letter,
mhm.
it needs to be translated, right? I mean, yeah.
Well, I mean, I would say that the hope would be that if they speak English and they can type it in English, that would be key. Or you could certainly translate them.
Okay.
There is a part in the letter writer services where you will identify if you want your letters to be your rights to be waived to see your letters, or you want to retain your rights. And in my experience, I will share with you the honest truth. It is a choice. It is a personal, individual choice on whether you retain your rights or you waive your rights. I personally don't think there is a right or wrong in regards to that decision. However, as an advisor, it's my job to make the best recommendation to students. And I personally would recommend that you waive your rights to see your letters, because when it comes down to the nitty gritty, the end of the line, and you are matched up with another candidate and they are just as great as you are, and they're trying to break a tie, they will likely look at that and say, gosh, well, this person's letters are more objective because they're trusting their letter writers to write their letter versus somebody who maybe coached their letter writer. So what I would say with that is there is a way for you to identify which letters are confidential and which ones aren't. And, if you have a letter from someone who doesn't speak English and it needs some help and support translating it, and you're the person that ends up doing it, that's fine. It might be better to have somebody else do that and type it up. But, to be honest, there's some really great software out there that does it anyway.
Okay.
That they can indicate, they can use that software to translate it automatically and put the English version in there. But I would also encourage you to make sure that you do try and shadow a dentist here, because if you're going to apply to US schools, you need to think about that as well. That a lot of US schools would want to see you understand the dental world in the US.
Yeah.
So.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions about letters before we move on? We did have a comment. Our director, Mary Crowell, thank you for coming, also suggested waiving your rights. Okay. So how do I do the school section, Shannon?
Well, there's a couple things that you should do when looking at schools. first off, you want to make sure that you have time to apply. Last minute is always bad. Know what the program and the CAS requirements are, and make sure that you're first off eligible, and don't be afraid to ask questions. If the websites don't make sense, or if you have any questions, there are real live people out there waiting to talk to you. And if you have any questions, waiting to talk to you, and they really do want to talk to you, you can call them and ask. The other big thing is financial stability. How many schools are you wanting to apply to? And it should really be based on how many you can afford. Example, national average is from like medical schools, for example, is 17. But in reality, Boise State students typically sit around 13 to 15. But you have to look at fees and stuff like that. I don't know if I missed anything on that one. Sorry, I'm looking
Make sure
at
you research
instructions.
your programs, that you understand that you are eligible for those programs. Call the schools if in doubt, like if you're missing a prerequisite or something. Make sure the antidote I could give to this is I had a student who had researched schools at the beginning of his process, and he had identified all the schools that didn't that accepted AP credit. He had AP credit for physics. And then he applied, and he on a whim added another school. And they don't accept AP. And he ended up getting accepted to their school in the fall. And he was forced to take physics in the spring before he graduated, so he could go to that school. And so you want to make sure when you're applying that you truly are eligible. And the other is, don't apply to a school you really don't want to go to. Because if you get accepted to them and you decline their offer because you didn't want to go there, that's a huge problem. That's not a good way to go about it. So be smart and apply to a place you really truly would go. I know everybody says, gosh, I just want to get into one medical school. But when you're faced with that kind of a decision of this is the only school I could get into, you need to be happy too. Okay, so make sure you think about your list. The fee schedule is different for each of the centralized application services. It's usually a lump fee for one school and then an individual fee for another. So today we had a webinar, and ACOMAS is $176 for the initial application, and then $49 for each school that you add, as an example.
So are there essays?
Why, yes, there are quite a few essays. So the big essay is the personal statement. And we don't have time in this workshop to go through an entire experience about personal statements because we've already done that. We did that in February. So we have a personal statement workshop, and we have the video and the slides posted on our website. And I will also send those through the chat today. I'll also send up a follow-up email for those of you who attended today to make sure you have all of the videos that you would ever need to be able to start this process. But personal statements vary from centralized application service to centralized application service. So in case of example, the med one tends to jive pretty closely with 5,300 characters with spaces. So it's character count, not words. OTCAS is probably the biggest one I've ever seen. It's about 7,500 characters. The nursing centralized application service, it varies from school to school on whether you have a personal statement or essay or not. So they don't have a set character count on those. But the kind of the run of the mill is about 4,500 characters. Yeah, you should use all your characters. Really, truly, you should. You need to be as close to that target as possible. In other words, use your words as an opportunity to shout at who you are. Every service is different, and sometimes they're called essays, sometimes they're called program materials, and there's a document. Some have prompts, some do not. Make sure you read and make sure you answer the prompt when you do those. Same rules apply. It's no formatting. So no underlining, bolding, no tabs, no single space, double space. There's none of that. It's a copy and paste into plain text into a box. Okay. And interestingly enough, when you look at the schedule of events on these centralized application services, the personal statements almost last. So I always tell students that because I'm like, think about it. They could choose to read your entire experience list first before your personal statement. Now, most often they will probably read your personal statement first, but keep that in mind. There are COVID essays as well. So a lot of application services like ACOMAS, for example, this is the ACOMAS ones, or PTCAS, or any of the centralized application services may have opted to add a few new questions so that you could talk about some resiliency and or grit. Sometimes there's an addendum section where you can talk about something that may be seen in a negative way, so that it's not in your personal statement where it doesn't belong. But these are some examples. So did your school move to offering an online curriculum during the COVID crisis? Did you have opportunity to receive a letter grade for any of your courses? And please describe COVID-19 has impacted your pathway with 2,500 characters. So you want to look to see if your service has any of those on there. These are great opportunities to express your ability to be resilient. It's not a place where you whine and complain that you didn't get hours. It's this is what I did instead. I couldn't get hours. I couldn't get my experience, but look what I did instead. Look what volunteer activity I pursued, or whatever it might be. There are also supplemental materials. In some cases, like the ACOMAS or the PTCAS or OTCAS, dental, they might actually have some of the secondary essay questions that go with that application inside the primary application. And you're given the privilege to answer those. In terms of the CAS systems, it varies. With AMCAS, the MD branch, they don't have supplemental questions inside, but they do have some questions related to your ethnicity, your disadvantage, if you're a disadvantaged population, and that could be someone who lives in a rural area or an underserved population, or has ethnicity or things like that. While others are so you just kind of need to read through the instructions to see if that's going to happen. And sometimes when you add your schools, those extra essays will populate in these centralized application services, and you do have to respond to those.
Okay. Checkpoint. When writing your personal essay, what is better, being descriptive, just the facts, or reflective? Tell us why your story is important.
What do you think? Reflective, Madison says.
80% reflective, 20% descriptive. Somebody.
Yeah, Nick. I think Nathan would agree. I've said that to him before too.
I think Nick's taking notes.
Yep. So there was a question asked, and you're more than welcome to ask them any questions as well. So addressing pass-fail. So at Boise State University, you were given the option from spring of 2020 and fall of 2020 to request a pass if you passed the course with a C- or better. And so what I would tell you is that it is going to depend on individual schools and programs on how they're going to receive that when it comes to prerequisite courses. So my experience has been 50% of the programs across the programs, whether it's PT, med, whatever it is, the schools, 50% of them have never accepted a pass before. Okay, never, 0. Okay, and then the other 50% have always accepted passes. So it didn't matter whether you took a pass or not in that case. But for the schools that have never accepted a pass before, they have been more lenient to the students who were forced to take a pass. So let's say it's a medical school that requires OChem, and they've never accepted a pass before, and you chose to take a pass. They could tell you you have to retake that class because they want a grade in it. So you need to look at your schools. You need to be wise and knowledgeable about your situation. If you are one of those students who opted for that option, you have to take that into consideration. And so we want you to be careful and mindful about that. So hopefully that clarified that. But tell me, are there questions about the essays that we can answer today?
I just want to, real quick, I just want to answer the recap on that one real quick, if I could, please. Because so many of our students did elect to take a P.
Mhm.
Understandably, I understand. But the key word you said there, opt.
Yeah.
Opt.
Right. So you do have to check with your schools. You know, oftentimes students would reach out to me during the process of selecting a pass and ask me this question. And I would say, go talk to a couple of your schools and see if it's going to be a problem, and then make the best decision that you can. They have places for COVID questions to talk about the issues that occurred, right? So you can talk about grades. You could say, gosh, you know, I ended up needing, because of the mechanism of being thrown into online in the middle of my semester, I didn't do as well as I could have, but look what I did in my next semester in terms of those steps that I took. So that would be how I addressed it, if that helps. All right, if there are no more questions about personal statements, essays, or anything like that, we're gonna move on.
Okay, so Erin, I have a question. If I have to go take a test, where does that information go?
Excellent question. So there's two types of options that are going to happen. There is the automated, it automatically populates onto your application, and there's it needs to be directly sent. In the case of the MCAT, the DAT, the OAT, and the PCAT, you actually will indicate on the application when you're taking the test. Or if you're going, or subsequent test takers, like you took it and you got a score, it will automatically populate on those service applications, okay? You have to keep up to date on it though. If you change your date, you need to change the information. That is one of the things that you can change once you've submitted. And you can submit without your test scores. You can. It's called a blind submission. We can talk a little bit about those strategies a little bit later. But for those tests, they typically transmit right to the application, but you do have to, under the testing section, indicate when your test is supposed to be so that they can pull that information. In the case of PT, OT, PA, not all schools require the GRE. And so they don't transmit them automatically. You do request your scores to directly be sent to the schools. Okay, so when you go to take the test that day, you get about 20 schools for free where you put the GRE, you say, I want it to go to this school, this school, this school, and this school. And 10 days after your test, they deliver that official score to the school directly. Okay. This one's yours.
So there's a few things that you need to know. There are very, very few things that you can change after you submit. So if you notice the really, really short list, so you need to make sure that you cross all your T's and dot your I's and keep your shoelaces tied. Double, triple check everything. It's a good idea to have your pre-health advisor review your application before you submit it. Make sure you're very, very careful. Like I said, you can't change very, very much.
You are in charge of monitoring your status. What I love about the centralized application services is that they are always up to date and they are very efficient. They communicate with you well. Once you submit your application, they do everything in their power to make it as timely a manner as possible. Even with all of the conditions of last year with COVID, they still managed to get their applications out 10 business days out after they received those submissions. They did a really good job. But you are responsible for checking your status on a regular basis. It's available 24/7. You log into your account and it will show you exactly where you're at. They will send you emails and notifications on a lot of the different components, i.e. the letters of recommendation. if someone uploads their letter, it immediately emails you and tells you that they've done that. And that should prompt you to send a thank you. The other pieces is that they do update you when they move you from your status of verified to complete. In other words, they are ready to send it to your schools. And they even notify when they're transmitting. So like if they're ready to transmit your application to the school, they will send it. This is key for you, for your letter writers, so that you can be like, hey, my stuff's going to the school. I need that information as soon as you can get it, right? So that you get those in a timely fashion. If you are notified that you've been verified and you're complete, but it's been almost like 4 or 6 weeks and your schools haven't received your information, you need to get a hold of the service as quick as possible. You can view your application status history, okay? And again, it's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, except for scheduled maintenance. While you're applying, have a plan. Sit down with one of us, talk through your plan with us so we can help you see if there are any kinks in the hose. But have one, create a plan, create a timeline, treat it like a scheduled assignment. Say, okay, I want my application submitted on this date. What do I need to do? What are the parts? Which days am I doing the deadlines? And set assignments for yourself. You can write out most of your essays and then paste them in with no text formatting before the application even opens. Start early on the things that you can do. Right now, in my world, students who are applying this summer should be working on personal statements, writing out their experiences, getting their letter writers figured out, identifying their schools, and studying for their tests. When the application's open, they can read through all the instructions. They can take the college work piece by piece. They take each section of it in a little bit of bites. Maybe you spend 30 minutes a day or 2 hours a week trying to get it done based off of your goals. Make sure you read through the school websites and you understand their process. Because some of these schools, the secondary applications, the second part after you've been submitted, sometimes they email them to you. Sometimes they expect you to go out to their website and pull the information. Sometimes they expect you to have done it inside the application, and you need to know what are the steps you need to take. I almost think you need like a Google spreadsheet that says, okay, I'm doing this for this school and this for this school and this for this information. I know I've met all the prerequisites for my school. I know exactly which letters of recommendation are required. I have talked to an admissions person from each of my schools, so I know exactly what's going on. Okay. Apply early. It doesn't have to be earliest. I don't need you all panicking and running into my office and saying, I have to apply by May 27th, because you don't. Okay, but apply early, but make sure you have the best work in it, in a sense that I would rather you apply a little later and have all of your information in there perfect. I'm not kidding. There can be detrimental problems when you misspell physician in your application. It's happened. It's that simple. It could be that little tiny thing. There are lots of resources in our office and with the career services team. The personal statement workshop is a video. It's a slideshow, and we will have the handout out. We haven't got that up yet, but we do have our handouts built. The writing your experience workshop is also slides, also a video. The letter of recommendation workshop, that's the application cohort meeting we had in March. And the last thing I really want to talk to you about is really important that you be aware of. Anything you put on the internet, is there forever. Okay, so you need to think about your current social media presence. If you're on Facebook or Instagram, if you're on LinkedIn, what's on there? Is there profanities? Is there foul language? You know, you've heard me swear in this meeting today. Think about that. they will go out and look at you on your social media. They have a right to do that. And even if you make it private, stuff gets out. So think about what you've put on there. Think about cleaning it up. Think about who you're friends with that's tagging you in certain things. How will that affect your application in terms of professionalism? And think about it from a bigger picture, like your future. Like when you go off to medical school or you go off to PT school and now you're a physical therapist and somebody found you on Facebook. How do you appear to them? It will not affect you negatively, Dylan, if you don't have social media. It won't punish you for that. But if they find you on social media with something like your hand caught in the cookie jar, that's not okay. And so I know you're all good students and you're all professional, but I can't say it enough. Be thoughtful about your social media presence. Okay? We are going to serve you. So after spring break, registration is over. Aaron and Shannon are going to be in hour appointments. Praise Jesus. You can email us and we will set up a time to go through your entire application process and look at your plan and help you identify your needs. Okay. And we are here all summer long to help you with that as well. Olga, myself, Shannon, Mary, Kelsey, and Kelly are all here to read your personal statement if you would like us to. We can read your experience sections. We can help you with those things. My hope is that you take us up on those offers so that we can help you make sure that primary rocks the house. Once you do the primary, it's almost like cake, because then even though it's hard to write more essays about yourself on a secondary, you know what to do. You've already done it several times, and so it's easier. And so then we'll set you free. But I will tell you, I have a premium version of the Grammarly. It rocks. And if you need to borrow it from me because you don't want to pay for it, I'm more than happy to throw it in there. But it needs to be close to finished so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. But we can do those things for you. So Shannon and I put our email addresses on there. Career Services is also available. The Writing Center is available, because I can't stress enough how much writing is in this application process. Okay. So I'm going to have Shannon take from the notes the links that I put on this slide and post them in the chat. And both Kelly and Kelsey have posted their contact information if you want to use them.
Which ones am I putting in here?
On that, just the video links for the workshops. I think it's on the last slide I was just on. It would have been slide 52. So coming soon. Don't take my word for it. Talk to some real students. So on April 26th, we will have the pre-dental panel. We'll have 3 students who got accepted this year who did exactly what they needed to do because they got in. Pre-med will be on Tuesday from 5 to 6:30, same with the Monday. Okay, and we'll be sending links out. We just haven't got those set up yet because I still got to get our folks. Okay, and the pre-health folks, OT students, PT students, optometry students, pharmacy students, PA students. We're going to find one from each. So you can ask them, what's it like to apply? And how did it feel? This is a tradition that we've had for pre-med and dent year after year for almost 15 to 20 years. And you get a chance to meet with those who were successful and celebrate their acceptances, but also get to hear the real truth. Questions?
Yeah, Olga's raising her hand.
Yes, Miss Olga.
Not so much a question, but something that I tell my students. I'll bet you tell them this too. writing about yourself is always so hard, the first couple of drafts. So a trick I tell my students is pretend you're writing about someone else. If I were to write about Olga, my best friend Olga, for example, and everything this person has been through and what they've survived and their strengths and their skills, it's a whole lot easier than Olga to write about Olga. So if I can pull myself out of it, that's the first draft and it's going to be terrible. And that's the other thing I tell my students, your first draft sucks. It will always suck, right? Except that it will suck. And then you can work on your second draft and your third draft. But if you're stuck in that writer's block where you're like, I don't know what to say, you just pour it out as if you were speaking about someone else.
Yeah.
And then circle back. I just find that that's a little trick that might help you if you're facing a blank page and going, I don't know where to go from here.
Starting with more and ending with less is always better. It's okay to write a whole bunch of stuff about yourself so that you can pull the beauty out of those pieces, because you're all beautiful or handsome. Okay. Questions you guys have about this process?
Throughout the summer, is it the same way to reach you guys, like same emails and through the career services website and stuff?
We
Yeah.
like to work. We'll be here.
Thanks. I will be there.
Yep, we're here all summer. This is our season. So not that I don't ever not have a season going on, but this is application season and we are here to support. So and we'll be doing Zoom for the most part until closer, probably. I mean, I don't have any know-how when I won't be doing Zoom right now, so we can do that. If you email me, Dylan, a list of dates and times, and that goes for anybody. If you email me a list of dates and times the week of the 19th and the week of the 26th, I'm more than happy to see if I have a spot in there for you. For sure.
Erin, I was wondering if you were going to talk about the strategy for submitting the application before you have your test back.
That's a great question, and I'm happy to answer it. And it's a really individual personal decision on whether you're going to blind submit before your scores or not. And that really, it could be for med, it could be for dent. For the GRE, the nice thing about the GRE is that you receive your scores the day you take your test. And so then it's 10 days before the school gets it. So really, I mean, it's a pretty even kilt. So you can wait for your GRE score before you submit, or you can just apply to a school that doesn't require the GRE. In terms of the MCAT, and in terms of the DAT, and in terms of the OAT, those tests, they come at certain times, right? You schedule out a date and a time when you take the test. And so here's the two strategies that you have. Strategy one, I consider to be the less painful for some students because they trust themselves because they now have a score in their hand, right? And that's waiting for your score. But that does have some cons with that decision. If you choose to wait for your score, an MCAT score arrives 35 days after you take it. So if you take it in late June, you're not getting it until July. And that's crunching pretty close to your application being a little on the late side. So that means that you either have to squeeze your stuff sooner and take it in May, right? So that you get your score earlier, but that cuts into your study ability, right? So that's option A. Option B is a blind submission to one school, just one. You can do that. You can submit an application to one school, get it through the entire verification process, and in turn with that, you can, once you get your score back, then you can go, ooh, it's exactly what I hoped it'd be. And you go in and you pay for the rest of your schools and off your application goes with your score. If you do this, you would want to do it with some pieces to the puzzle. I would strongly recommend practice exams. So the double AMC practice exam for the PAP, for example, gives you that freedom to be able to gauge. So 8 out of the 10 students that have taken a double AMC practice exam a week before their test scored the same score. So if you are getting your application ready to go and you're taking practice exams while you're getting ready, and your MCAT practice exams are coming out really clean, you could probably get away with submitting to one school so that you're getting it through that verification process before your score arrives. Now, here's the thing. At the end of the day, no matter which strategy you use, they're going to see both scores if you take it more than once. But what the blind submit does is it allows you the freedom to take a little extra time to study and try and do everything in your power to be successful the first time you take the test. Okay. So Angie, could you maybe text me your program, which branch of program you're trying to do, because we're talking about a lot. So Dylan's question was, would the blind submission to a school that you aren't highly likely to get into, backup school or something like that? No, I'd go for the one you want. That's it. That's the one, because at the end of the day, no matter what you do, they're going to see all of your test scores. They're going to see all your tests. So do the one that's your heart, right? Get your name in the hat if you're going to blind submit to the one that's the dream school. Keep in mind fee waiver. So like if you are able to get fee waiver or fee assistance, you get 20 free schools for MD. So if it's free, you're only out the cost by blind submitting to all of them. So, okay, PA. All right, so Angie, what I would share with you, and Angie's question was, well, my deadline's November 1st. Well, Idaho State University is not a rolling admission school, but we encourage students to apply to multiple schools, and they might be applying to a school that's rolling admission. To be honest with PA, I think early is anything in the month of June and July. I think August gets touch and go. If you're applying to a school that's not rolling admission, like Idaho State University, yes, you can apply later, but I want you to also be thoughtful. Taking your GRE while you're in the middle of school sucks. So writing essays in the middle of school sucks. So if you can do everything in your power to try and get it in by Labor Day for ISU's PA program, that would be my recommendation. But for other schools, August 1st can be like Utah. Utah's deadline is August 1st. So I would want students to have their PA application in for those schools that have earlier deadlines, and then you can always add the other schools that have later deadlines. But I encourage students to apply early. For PA, I think October is too late, personally, but there are schools that aren't rolling admission like ISU. So the question is, will scores look at your app without a score? Yes and no. I think with the COVID year, they were more willing to exclude the score and look at the rest of your app. But ideally, what they might do is look at all of your piece and then send you a secondary. And then when they get your score, that might opt you out depending on that. So not really. Most of the schools will wait for your score before they will take it through its first review, especially with MD programs, because they have a tendency to look at score and they have a tendency to look at score and GPA first, unfortunately. Okay, and I usually turn around my personal statements. I ask you to give me a deadline, and I need at least 3 days. But I want a deadline from you that's realistic. If you take the GRE, but a particular school does not require it, is there a place to include it, and should you? No, because the schools take the GRE directly. So your GRE score, once you take it, you tell it which schools you want it to go to, and it just won't go to the school that doesn't require the GRE. Anything else? All right. Well, you're free to, again, PA students can set up with Olga or myself. The other programs Shannon and I can take if you need it. I hope this was helpful. Let me know if there's something that we didn't offer that you had questions about, because this is a work in progress. This is our first time actually offering this type of a workshop. So please let me know if there's anything that you wish we would have done. And that's all I have for you all.
This was awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was very helpful.
Bye, Caitlin.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Let's see. Am I on? Oh, Erin, I would
Yeah.
love to schedule a meeting with you to talk with you in person.
Okay. Can you email me a list of times that you can meet? I do have a
Absolutely,
few
yeah.
openings during spring break, but I have a big project I need to start on. So it would be at the beginning of the week. So either a Monday or a Tuesday. So,
Yeah,
but
I
other
can
than
wait till
that,
after
yeah.
the break.
Okay.
That's
Just
fine.
email me some times and I'll find you a spot.
Okay.
Oh, and Caitlin, I wasn't meaning to call you out. Erin told me, she's like, oh, Caitlin's the only one that's allowed to email.
Well, I had
Yeah.
already accepted her email request and said yes.
She's the only
So
one.
I didn't want her to feel bad. Can she
I'm glad I
email
can
me?
be a good example for the future.
Yep.
All
So,
right. Well, thank you so much. This was great. And I will be looking at those other resources. I wasn't able to make every meeting, but that's awesome that they're online. So thank you for sharing.
once I get this recording, I'll send it out to everybody that attended today.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys.
Chill.
Hey, great job.
Thank you, Mary.
Yeah, it
I
was.
hope that was helpful.
Oh, it was great. Yeah, you did a great job. I like the questions too that Shannon brought up. So
You
you did just fine. Did just fine.